And welcome to videos from Vegas. We got in about an hour late yesterday and it was kind of hectic, so I didn't do my usual THG's in Vegas video. I still may. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw the picture I took last night of the view from the hotel room. Pretty A-okay. That being said, let us now jump into where I jumped out yesterday. And I had intended to probably do a couple videos when I got here, and that just didn't happen. So we're up to Tampa. So we got Tampa, Toronto, and Vancouver today, and then tomorrow it's Vegas, Washington, and Winnipeg, and then we're all done the season previews. Now, Tampa, they get thought of as a team that chokes, and I get it. You know, if it gets into Game 7, they struggle. Last year, well, a couple months ago, they didn't lose in Game 7. They lost in Game 4, getting swept by the surprising Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, they had 128 points, great season, out in round 1. 2017-2018, they had 113 points, and they're out in round 3. 2016-2017, 94 points and missed the playoffs. That was a year where they had a furious finish, very nearly made the playoffs, but didn't get there. 2015-2016, 97 points, and they made it to round 3. And in 2014-2015, they had 108 points, and they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, where they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. And that was a very solid Stanley Cup Finals. But the lingering view of this team right now is that they're a team that can't get it done when they need to. And it is a perception that for them to change it, they've got to win a Stanley Cup. There's no way around it. There's no team in the NHL, I feel, that needs that Stanley Cup more than this one. And every year they seem to make moves with their eyes on winning that ultimate prize. And they keep falling short. And as I said, this year they fell short even more than normal, which was really stark considering they were the number 1 team in the league. But they've had solid point totals for 4 years. Now in goals for, they had 325, which was first in the National Hockey League. They had 222 goals against, which was 5th in the National Hockey League. Pretty solid numbers all around. By the end of October, they were 8-2-1, and that's right about where they were number 1 on my power rankings, and they'd stay there for most of the year. November, 18-7-1. December, they were 31-7-2. That was when they were making it look like they were up here, and the rest of the league was way below them. And that's kind of where they stayed for most of the year. By the end of January, they were 37-11-2, so they had an iffy January by their standard. February 49-12-4, March 59-15-4, and by the end of the season in April, 62-16-4. And this team just doesn't seem to struggle during the regular season. Not over the last 2 years anyways. And even in the year where they missed the playoffs, 94 points is still a pretty good total, and as I said, that involved a furious finish, and that was without Stamkos for most of the season. So they were still pretty darn good. The MVP of this team is Nikita Kucherov. He is the engine by which this team will be measured. If his 128-point season is followed by one of less than 100 points, that'll be considered a disappointment. I would be sure for him and for some fans. I wouldn't be surprised to see his point totals fall, only because in this day and age, 128 points, probably the peak you can reach, and I would think that he'll fall off a bit from that. Not a lot. I don't foresee like a huge drop for him. Goals leader, I kind of expect Braden Point to lead this team in goals. Now I'm assuming Braden Point's going to get his contract done, and that he'll play on their opening night roster. Fingers crossed on that one, right? Dark horse, I went with Matthew Joseph. Joseph throughout the year, kind of an unheralded rookie. One of those guys who just And I thought about putting Cirelli in there, but Joseph to me is more of a dark horse than Cirelli. Cirelli has a chance that if Braden Point does hold out, Cirelli's career could get a whole lot better much quicker. What about? I put Luke Schenn. Luke Schenn decided to sign in Tampa. I want a shot at winning a Stanley Cup and getting a cup ring. He gets to Tampa. Tampa goes out and gets more defensemen. It is going to be a challenge for Luke Schenn to make this roster, but he played well for the Canucks at the end of last season. Clearly feels he has something to prove, a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Maybe that gets him into the lineup in Tampa. Maybe it causes a surprise in terms of who actually makes the roster. Trade bait. I went with Tyler Johnson due to the fact that when we talk about needing cap space and what they're going to do for cap space, and hey, did you hear about cap space? Tyler Johnson's name comes up regularly. And I could see, of all of their spots on the roster, a situation where maybe Tyler Johnson becomes a redundant piece. Now, he had 29 goals this last year, and he's really at this point kind of underrated, but I could still see him being a guy who ends up on his way out of town in terms of freeing up cap space. All right, now, lineup. Yes, the lineup of the team. Andre Palat, Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov. Yeah, that's a pretty good line right there. Palat's a guy who's underrated as well. Yanni Gourde, Braden Point, and Tyler Johnson. That rounds out an excellent top six. One of the best top sixes in the NHL. Alex Killorn, Anthony Cirelli, and Matthew Joseph. And there's rounding out the best top nine in the NHL. For my money, best top nine in the National Hockey League. And again, it's just a matter of doing it in the playoffs. That's really what it is. So fourth line, probably Danik Martel, Cedric Paquette, Adam Ernie. So there's your fourth line, and potentially making the roster. I put Alexander Volkov and Boris Kachuk on the left side there, or Kachuk, sorry. Jamel Smith down the middle. He can play on the wings as well. And Taylor Radish. Radish is the interesting one. So he had his first year in Syracuse last year. I could see him pushing for a roster spot. And if Taylor Radish ends up becoming what they foresee, if he becomes that top six forward, that's where Tyler Johnson becomes expendable. So as soon as Radish becomes a pretty good scorer, or Joseph takes that next step, that's where, as a GM, you go, okay, Johnson's cap hit is holding me back, so I've got these other guys who can replace him, and that's really what it's a matter of. It's why they could trade out JT Miller. On the blue line, Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev. I expect Sergachev to take that next step this year. I like Sergachev a lot. This is the year where it shows whether or not he is really that good. This is where they stop sheltering him at all. He has had back-to-back 40-point seasons. It's been understated because of who he plays with. Ryan McDonough, Eric Chernak, Braden Coburn, and Kevin Shattenkirk now rounds out that top six. So Shattenkirk here likely ends up on that third pairing. He might push for second pairing, but I would think he ends up on the third. And this is where we come back to when he was putting up really good point totals for St. Louis. If he's playing those third pairing minutes and special teams, he will produce. Now, that could bite into the ice time for Sergachev and the ability of him for him to put up more than, say, 45, 50 points. But I still think Sergachev is pretty darn good, and I think he's going to produce. And then the depth on the blue line, whether it's Cameron Gauntz, Luke Witkowski, Jan Ruda. Ruda was a highly thought of defenseman not too long ago. Cal Foote, he's going to try to push his way onto this roster. And Luke Schenn. Luke Schenn, of course, as I said, decided to sign here instead of Vancouver. It doesn't look good for him right now, especially if you buy into Cal Foote being ready. If you view Cal Foote as being NHL ready, Luke Schenn may find himself on waivers. And if he does, the Canucks will probably pick him. Well, I don't know if the Canucks would pick him up now. I don't know that they'd have the room, but this was his call. He's rolling the dice and betting on himself, and in a city where he should have a shot at a Stanley Cup. It'd be interesting if Luke Schenn was picked up on waivers by Toronto, wouldn't it? Anyways, in goal, Andrei Vasilevsky and Curtis McElhinney would appear to be the tandem the team's going to go with. I have Louis Domingue on the depth chart only because he's still their property, not because I think he's going to start the season there. And Mike Condon is there to go to the American League. So I know Condon wants to get back to the NHL. I know he believes he can still play in the National Hockey League. The problem is he's likely not going to beat out Curtis McElhinney. If he beats out McElhinney and McElhinney goes on waivers, that'll be a shocker. But if Condon does, it won't be a surprise at all. That being said, this is a team that absolutely should. I didn't put this. I knew I missed something. So let me go ahead and grab this. I didn't put who's out because that seemed to be less and less of a talking point with teams as I was going along. So for my likely finish, it's a good thing this marker works right out of the box. Likely finish. I'll put first. The worst I can see them being is second, and that's even with them likely holding up a little bit. This is not a team that's going to kill itself every night this year to equal that point total again. There was an obsession with getting to 62 wins, and they did it. And then they fell apart and they got 0 in the playoffs. So I expect them to be either first or second in the division. And they might be more dangerous if they're second. They might be more dangerous if they end up with like 105, 106, 107 points. They might be more dangerous if they go into a slump just before the playoffs. This is a team that we will watch this year, and there will be a lot of people expecting to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm kind of expecting to win a Stanley Cup this year. Now, last summer I said Winnipeg, and then that didn't happen. But this summer, I kind of like Tampa, and I think first or second. I can't see them finishing below second. Not with that forward group, not with that goaltending, and definitely not with an underrated blue line. There are those who underrate Vasilevsky, and this is going to be the year where he proves himself, or he falls back to earth, and there's going to be a lot of people pointing and going, "Ha! See, we said he wasn't that good." So we'll see what he does and what the Lightning do in general, but it's going to be a fun season for them. So let me know where you think they're going to finish, and more importantly, can they finally win a Stanley Cup? Now, I know they won one in 2004, but that feels like forever ago, and it was a completely different team. And after 3 trips to at least the third round out of 4 years, last year being out in the first round and getting swept in the first round, it was stunning. So is this where we see a stunning comeback by them? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And of course, I brought boards to Vegas. Why wouldn't I bring boards to Vegas? I'll talk to you guys again soon.